So hello and welcome everyone to this new tutorial about front-end development. In this tutorial, I will be introducing JavaScript. JavaScript is the language which will make our web pages interactive. So we already learned how to describe our web pages using HTML and then how to style those pages using CSS, and now using JavaScript we will add more interactive response to our web pages. So in this video I will start by showing a hello world example to JavaScript and showing the script tag which we will use to put our JavaScript code. Then I will show you the console.log command which we will use to log string messages, and that will be very helpful later for debugging our code. But for now we will use it also to show our output and show the different capabilities of JavaScript. Then I will start by showing how we define variables and what operation we can do on numbers. Then we will go through the typeof command and show the four main types in JavaScript, which are number, strings, undefined, and objects. Then we will go through different operators on numbers and string, such as like adding numbers or adding strings. Then we have also the plus plus operators for number, the minus, those mostly are for numbers. However, this plus and plus equal, we will see that also these two would work on strings. Then I will show how we will make lists using the array construct. This is the syntax for doing that. Then I will show which methods we can call on arrays, such as push to add a new entry to the array, length to get the number of elements inside the array, and the splice to delete and add new elements to the array. Then I will introduce the loops, the for loop, while loop, and then using this loop I will show you how you can change the DOM. So basically here we will go back to something similar to our hello world example, and we will try to add new elements to our HTML page. So in this example we will have an array with strings, and we will try to display the strings inside this array using multiple divs. Let's jump to the code. So here in VS Code, I already prepared a folder for our tutorial. I called it video 8, and inside this folder I already have an HTML page called the GS intro, and this is an empty page for now. I will use the emit feature of VS Code, emit a basic HTML page, and let me also display it in the web browser using open with live server. So this is our empty page. Let me put it side by side with VS Code. The first way I will show you here in this tutorial for adding JavaScript code is using the script tag. So for that, we just write script in VS Code. And as you can see, now we have the emit option. Click enter, and then we have our script tag, and inside this script we can write our JavaScript code. So the first example I want to show here is how to show a hello JavaScript message in the web page, and for that I will use the document. So this is one of the objects which we can access in JavaScript, and this object document represents our web page here. It's, as I will explain later, a property of the window object, and the window object represents our web browser window. Any property of the window object we can access directly like this just by typing document. And in the document, for example, one thing which we can access is the body of our HTML page here. So if I wrote like document.body, then I already now accessing the body of the HTML page. And as you will see later, this body is an HTML element, as you can also see here in VS Code. So it tells you that this is a property of the document called body, and the type is HTML element. And every HTML element has a property called inner HTML or inner text. So let me now, for example, use the inner text, and this is a text which we can show inside the body tag. And let's put that to hello JavaScript, and adding this semicolon here at the end is optional in JavaScript. However, I will use it always because the first thing that the browser will do before executing is adding the missing semicolons, and that could cause some bugs which we don't want, and most of the code I've seen in the internet uses this semicolon at the end. I am also used to using this semicolon since I'm coming from a Java and C++ background where this is a must, so you have to add it always to the lines. However, maybe for this first example, let me remove it and save. And as you can see, our hello JavaScript will appear here on the page, and by adding a semicolon, it will stay the same. Let me open the developer tools in Chrome, and let's select this element here. So if we went to the HTML, you can see now inside our body, we have this text here, hello JavaScript, because this command here is already executed. And don't worry about this code here. This is some code which is injected by the live server to refresh the page. This does not belong to our web page. And when you put that on a real server, this code will not be there. So let me show you now what would happen if we put this script tag, and that's also a place where we can put our script tag. If we put it here and I saved, you will see that here we get an error and it telling us that it cannot set the properties of a null, and this error is happening exactly where our JavaScript command is. And this is happening because in the header here part, the body property is not defined yet. It's null, so there is no inner text here, and that's why I chosen to put this script tag now inside the body, because I want to use the body property of this document. So let me put this back here inside the body tag and save. And now I will comment this line, and let me introduce now the console.log. And inside this console.log, you can output messages which will appear here in the console tab in our development tools. So let me also here write hello JavaScript and save. And as you can see here in the console tab, it appears like hello JavaScript. And also we can click here inside this console and it appears here. One thing which could be important when debugging JavaScript code is that this console tab here can also be used to write JavaScript command. For quick testing, you can write some instructions here. You don't need to come inside the script and write again and reload your page. So for example, I can write here console.log and then I can run this instruction, and as you can see here, our message is appeared here. However, mostly you will see me writing the code inside this script tag here for this tutorial. Okay, let's start now by defining some variables. So for defining variables in JavaScript, I will use the var keyword. This var keyword is usable since the early standards of JavaScript, and in the newer standards like in ES6, this is the newest standard which appeared in 2015. There are two new keywords which can be used to define variables. These are the let and const, and the difference between the two is the scope. As you will see here in JavaScript, the scope will be the functions. That we will come to that when we define functions, and not a block, and that applies for the var keyword. However, for the let and const, the scope of the defined variables are block based, and we will come to that also later. So let me for now just define a variable. I will call it x and give it a value of 5. So this variable will contain a number. And for example, you can also define a variable y, which is x times 2. Yeah, we can output those, and let's write, for example, now the value of the y to console. I can do that, for example, by simply writing log y. And when I save the page, you will see here that we have now hello JavaScript and then 10, which is the value of y. There are many operators which we can apply on numbers. For example, plus plus operator. So now our x variable is 5, and if we make x plus plus, so it should be now 6. So as you can see here. And similar to other languages, we also have the construct like x plus equal. So we can add 4. So now our x is 10. And then I can also use the modulo operator. So we can either write it, for example, x equal x modulo 5. And since x is 10, this should be 0. An equivalent and similar way to write this command, since here we have x on the left and right side, we can write it like this: x modulo equal 5. And let me print this to the console. So you can see now the output is 0. Since here x is 10, then 10 modulo 5 is 0. And then here we have 0 modulo 5, which is also 0. Yeah, other operators such like minus and division is also available for numbers. So let me try the division. 11 divided by 2, for example. If we look at it's like 5.5, as you can see here. So if you are coming from a C++ background or Java, you are used to integers and floats. So here in JavaScript, all the variables or the number variables are of type float 64. So the integers are only a subset of those 64-bit float values. So another thing here in this var variable, so if I used var, I can also define x again, which usually not accepted by compilers such as C++ and Java compilers. However, here you can do it again. We can write var x equal maybe true, for example, and now here we are defining Boolean variables. For Boolean variables, we have two values, true or false. And now if I logged x, you will see that x here is true. Another differences to strongly typed languages that we can change the type of the variable. So first x, for example, was defined as a number. Now it's a Boolean, and now I can even assign to it a value which is a string, as you can see here. So now let's have a look at the type of the variables. We will use the typeof command. So here I will write 5 commands, as you can see here. So first I am logging the type of a number, which is 1, then a type of a string, which includes only one character, 1, then a type of an object. We will come to that later, don't worry about it. So this is how we define object using these curly brackets and putting properties inside it. So here we are defining one object which has only one property called I, and this property has a value of 1. Then we have a special object called null. We will have a look at that. This is used similar to other programming languages such as Java and C++ to signal that the object has not been assigned a value yet. Here we have the value of a symbol f, which is not defined, as you can see in this document. And let me now save the page, and you can see that the type of 1 is a number, while the second one here, it outputs a string. Then these two here, the object and the null, the type of them both is an object. And then f, since it's never defined in our document, it's undefined. And of course, I forgot now here the boolean. So if I put type of true, you will see that here we have a boolean, and these are the basic types of JavaScript. So basically we have numbers, strings, object, undefined, and boolean. So, and as I said before, the type number is the same for integer and float values. So now if I have like 1.1, you will see also that its type is a number. So now let me show you some operation on the strings. So as you've seen here above, we have our x variable, which is now a string. So we can add to it. So this string contain now the sentence, this is a string, and we can add to it. So let's use the plus equal operator and say more text, for example. And let me show this on the console. So you can see that using this plus equal command, we appended a text to the end of our string. And we can do that also here, for example, directly inside the console. So inside the console, maybe we want to output a formatted string, especially if we have here, for example, multiple messages, we want to know which output we are looking at. So I can write, for example, here that x equal inside this two double quotations, and I can add to it the value of x, and now we will have the output as x equal, this is a string, and more text. Yeah. There are many methods to any variable which is a string. For example, we can change our string to lowercase using the method to lowercase. So our x is already in lowercase. So maybe let me first here change x to uppercase and log it. So you can see here we have x in the uppercase, and then using to lower we get x in the lowercase here. Notice that here if I did not assign the x to uppercase to x and I saved, that output here is still in lowercase. That's because to uppercase and to lowercase does not change the string itself, but rather return a new string which is uppercase or lowercase depending on which function you called. So let me return this to x equal x to uppercase. And other functions which we can use on the string, for example, is that can take single characters. So let me take one character. For that we can use the function x.char at, and here we need an index, which character we want. So now our x will contain this string here. This is a string, more text. So the index in here start by 0. So this t would be in the 0 index, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let me take fifth index here, and this should be an I. And here I will say char at 5. So as you can see, it's an I, and it's an uppercase because here we called x to lower, but we did not assign it back to x. So x is in the uppercase, and that's why you have here an uppercase I. To know the length of our string, we can use, for example, let me write this command here in the console. We can use x.length. So as you can see, we have 26 characters in our string. So this 26 characters are indexed from 0 to 25. So now if we use the char at using an index which is larger than 25, let's use the 26 for example, so we will get an empty character, as you will see here. I would say that's enough now about strings. Let's go back to numbers and see some math operations. So we've seen that we have the plus, minus, multiplications, and divisions. We also have exponents. So let me write 3 to the power of 2, what that will be. And this is how we write the exponent. So it's basically the number, the base, and then we have the multiplication sign 2 times, and then 2. That would be the exponent. This is read to 3 to the power of 2, and that should be 9, as you can see here. This operator here, double multiplication, is introduced in ES6. So earlier this is done using the mass object. So the mass contain an object which we write it like this with a uppercase M. It has a function called power, and here we put the base and the exponent. And let me save, and as you can see here now, it's also 9. Inside this mass object, there are many other functions. So for example, we have the sine, the cosine, the a sine. Let me show a list of that. So here we have some constant, the Euler number, and we have here the p. And as you can see, then we have different functions like abs, arccosine, hyperbolic, and arcsine, and so on. This is also tangent, tangent 2, arctangent 2, all the mass functions which you will need, also the log, the max and min, and the power which we already have used. There's also some random number generation, the square root, the sine, and many more. So let's look, for example, at sine of p, which should be 0. It's almost 0, as you can see here. So 10 to the minus 16. The cosine should be minus 1, as you can see here. And let me fix this string. So that's about the math. Let me now introduce the arrays. So defining an array that can be done by using this indexing brackets. So let me call the variable a and then these two indexing brackets, and this will define now an empty array. So let me use the console to log this array. So as you can see here, we already now defined an empty array which have a length of 0. We can add elements to this array. So let's add some numbers, for example, here. So you can see now we have 3 elements. So in the entry 0 we have 1, entry 1 we have 2, and then in entry 2 we have again 2. We can change this array by appending element to it using the method push. So we have a.push, and here we can push more elements. Let me push, for example, 44. So as you can see now here we have 4 elements. Yeah, we can apply this multiple times if you like to push more elements to this array. We can push even strings to this array. As you can see here, it's different. It's not like we learned in C++ or Java where all the elements of the array should be of the same type. So here we can mix types. So here we have some numbers and then strings, and we can even push objects to it, as you can see here. Let me now introduce the splice method, which we can use to delete entries from the array. So as you can see here, this method expects starting index and how many numbers we want to delete. So let's say we want to delete this number here, 44. So it's, as you can see in the index, 0, 1, 2, 3. So let's start from index 3, and we want to delete only one entry. And let me save. So as you can see, the 44 is deleted. We can delete 2, and now the 55 will be deleted, and so on. So let me for now delete these 2 elements here, since I want to have only now numbers inside the array. So I think here we have 3, 4, 5, 6. So starting from index 6, deleting 2 will remove the string 66 and the object. So now we only have numbers inside our array. And let me introduce our first for loop, and it's very similar to the Java language and C++. So we start by writing for, and we define our loop variable. Here I will use I, and I will start from 0. I actually want to loop over the elements of the array. So I will start from the entry 0, and I will loop till I is equal to and I will loop while I is smaller than the length of the array. So I will use the property length of the array, and again here I will add semicolon, and here I will put how I will increment the I. So I will, similar to Java and C++, so I will use I++, and then here we have the curly brackets, and inside them we will put what we want to execute inside each iteration of this loop. Here before the first semicolon, we define our iteration variable again here, the stopping criteria. So whenever I is equal to this length, we will break this loop. So our loop will stop, and this is how we will increase our loop variable. And let me here define a variable, call it sum, put it to 0, and then here I will be computing the sum of the element inside this array by just taking a and using this indexing brackets I. So what I'm doing here is basically saying, okay, let's add to this sum the value which inside the ith entry of the array, and let us log this to the console. So as you can see now, here we have the sum, which is 170. We can do this also with a while loop. So let me copy this here and change this to a while. And now here, since this is a while loop, I will define a variable here before we start the loop, and the increment of the variable should be inside the loop here. So this is, as you can see here, is similar to other known languages. So we start by while, and then here we put our condition. So our condition is that I is less than the length of the array, and here we are adding the ith element, and then we increment our iteration variable, which is I here, and this loop will break when I reaches the length of the array. So now if we printed the sum, as you can see, it's again 170. So I forgot to mention that actually here these statements I less than certain number, or here again those are, I mean, this less than is this conversion operator. So we have less than or equal, for example, also other conversion operator, and larger or equal, and these operators will always compare the numbers to the left to the number to the right and will return a Boolean variable which is either true or false, as we know. And if it's true, the loop will be executed. If it's false, the loop will break. That will apply for both the while and the for loop. There is also a do while loop. Difference between the while and the do while is that the do while loop will be executed at least once. So in the do while, we first execute, then we check the condition. Let me also write it here. We start by do. So we sum and then increment our loop, and then we will write while our condition is true. And let me save, and again, as you can see here, we have the sum, which is 170. So let me now introduce the if statement, and let's do that using this also here, combining that with this for loop here. Again, we have this for loop which computing the sum, and let me try to exclude numbers. So we have this array here, and let's say that I want to exclude the numbers which have only one digit. So this 1, 2, and 2, these three numbers all are contained one digit, and I will do that using the if loop. So I want to check first if the element at the current index, so a at I, is less than 10. So if it's less than 10, it would be 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. It could be also minus, but I'm assuming now the array has only positive numbers, or we can actually here use the apps, but let me keep it simple for now. So I will just check if it's exactly less than 10, then I will do nothing. So we have this curly bracket here, I will do nothing. If it's larger than 10, I will add it to the sum. And now, as you can see, so we have 1, 2, 2, those are 5. So our sum should be now 165, as you can see here. And usually instead of writing like this if else with one empty condition here, we can do it the other way around. So we can check that if our element at index I is larger or equal to 10, so it's 2 digits, then we sum it. And here then we don't need this else branch, and save it, and we still, as you can see here, have the sum as 165. We can also combine conditions using and or operators, and there's also of course the not operator. So let me first try the and operator. So let's say that if our number is 2 digits, so if it's larger than 10, and so using this ampersand, and let me check also if that the entry is maybe less than 60. So now we have two conditions. So our entry should be larger than 10. So that will drop this first three entries here, 1, 2, and 2. And it should be smaller than 60. So that will drop this 66. So we will have only 44 plus 55. So the output should be 99, as you can see here. So we have also, as I said, the not operator. For example, let's say and not. So now this is the not operator. We'll use this exclamation mark. So here we are saying that our variable should be larger than or equal to 10 and not smaller than 60. And we only have the 66, which, as you can see here now, the sum is 66. You have also the OR operator, which you can use, and this is the OR operator. And for the conversions, as you've seen now, we have the less and larger, and also with the equality. And there's of course the not equal. Let's say that we want our variable to be larger than 10 and maybe not equal to 66. So now we are back to 99 as sum, since now only these two are larger than 10 and they are not equal to 66. Yeah, so there is in JavaScript another way also to write comparisons and this non-equality. So for example, one things which are different to Java and C++ is that if we have a string contain the value of 1, let's say if we want to test if it's equal, so using this double equal, so we are checking if it's equal to the number 1. And as you can see here, it's true, although we know that the type of this one here is a string and the type of this one here is a number, but JavaScript will convert types and then do the comparison, and then these two will be equal. So if we don't want that, then we will need to use triple equal comparison. So this comparison will first check the type. So this is a string, this is a number, they are not equal types, then we already have a false. We don't need to go to the next step and testing those numbers. So as you can see here, it's false. The same apply also, for example, for here, not equal. So 1 is not equal to 1, is false because it is equal to 1. I would say that's enough for now about comparisons and Boolean operators. Let's do our last example where we want to modify our DOM by adding a div for each element inside this array A. For that, let us also first use this for loop. So we have our for loop over the element of the array A, and then as we seen here at the beginning, we have this property called document, which we were using. Let me copy this line and put it here. So the first thing we want to do here is to create our div element, and let's save it inside a variable called div. And for creating an HTML element in JavaScript, again, we use the document property of the window, and then this document has a method called create element, as you can see here, and it accepts a tag name, and the tag which we want to create is a div tag, and that's it basically. So now we have created a div tag. We know that this div tag should be of type HTML element, so we can check that by using instance of, and let's say HTML element. So this is also another comparison. So we are checking if our variable div is an instance of an HTML element, and the result here should be a boolean, either true or false. So as you can see, we got 6 times true because the div is an HTML element, and the same also for buttons on other. Can, for example, here create a button and it is also an HTML element. So let's go back to the div. For example, here after creating the div, we will use the same command here. So we'll use the inner text. So since this div is also an HTML element, it has the inner text, as you can see here, where we can put it to the ith entry of the array. Maybe we can also add some description here. Let's say a at index I, and okay, so we need to put here the value of I. So here this will output something like a at element 0 is equal to 1, then a at 2 equal to 1 equal to 2, and so on. And if we now run, if we saved, you can see here that the page is still empty because we created the element and we changed the inner text, but we did not add it to the body. So what we now need to do is to use the document.body, this property body of the document, and there is a method called append child, and we will add the div. So now here we are appending the div as a child of the body, and now when we save, as you can see here, we already have our divs created. Let me add an equal sign here, and if we check now our HTML, you can see that now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divs, because we have 6 elements in the array, and each one of these divs has an inner text which is equal to this expression which we have here. That's all what I wanted to show in this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye.